I think it was important to get to know her off the court because I do think that, connections, getting to know people really play a part in the success of teams.
Lexie Hull was nearly out of the WNBA. Drafted 6th overall by the IndianaFever in 2022, she was expected to dominate, but things didn't go as planned. Her future in the league seemed uncertain until she turned things around.
In a previous interview, you talked about struggling throughout the season. So what changed and how are you able to turn the page so that the end of the season went a lot better?
Lexie Hull had high expectations after helping Stanford win a national championship. As the 6th overall pick, she was expected to shine in the WNBA, but her early games were a struggle. She couldn't catch a break. Meanwhile, the IndianaFever weren't doing much better, struggling at one point with an 18-loss record. It was rough all around, and the pressure kept mounting. For a player once seen as a rising star, her WNBA future seemed anything but certain.
You have basketball in your genes. Your grandfather played basketball, your dad, and you have a twin sister who you played basketball with growing up. What was it like growing up in that family dynamic?
Well, we have a super competitive family, and having my dad play basketball collegiately, knew that basketball was going to be put in my hands at an early age, but my parents were, super excited about having us try every sport imaginable. So yeah, we grew up, my sister and I, playing a little bit of everything.
Lexie Hull struggled to find her rhythm in the WNBA. She wasn't getting enough minutes, playing less than players like Katie Lou Samuelson and Christy Wallace. Fans started questioning if she was just another overhyped draft pick. Being in the league is tough, but being stuck on the bench while your team is sinking? That's a whole different level of frustration. Just when things looked bleak, hope arrived. A game changer was on the way, someone who could turn it all around. Enter CaitlinClark, the hero ready to shake things up.
Clutch player by WNBA fans, and she was drafted to the W in 2022 with the IndianaFever in the first round as the 6th pick. I'm talking about professional basketball player Lexie Hull.
CaitlinClark changed everything the moment she stepped onto the court. You could feel the energy shift. Indiana went from a struggling team to one with real hope. But it wasn't just about her scoring, though she's elite at that too. She brought leadership, purpose, and a winning mentality. The Fever didn't just add a player, they gained a superstar leader. IT wasn't some fairy tale or a random stroke of luck. The team started believing in Clark, trusting her leadership, and that's when things turned around. Players fed off her energy, bought into her vision, and suddenly, Indiana wasn't just competing, they were growing, and one of the biggest beneficiaries? Lexie Hull. She got swept up in the momentum, finding her rhythm and proving she wasn't just another draft bust. With Clark leading the charge, Hull and the Fever finally had something they hadn't in a while: real direction and hope.
She's been called the clutch player by WNBA fans, and she was drafted to the W in 2022 with the IndianaFever in the first round as the 6th pick. I'm talking about professional basketball player Lexie Hull.
Let's be real, CaitlinClark saved Lexie Hull's career. That's not an exaggeration. It's the truth. Clark's court vision is unreal, making passes that leave defenders lost, like they just missed a magic trick. She doesn't just score, she elevates everyone around her. And suddenly, Hull, who was barely a factor before, had real opportunities. With Clark running the show, Hull wasn't just sitting on the bench anymore. She had the chance to prove herself, to finally make an impact on the court in ways she never had before.
At the beginning of the season, my playing time definitely looked different than it did at the end. So trusting that, I was staying ready, putting in the work so that when I did get the minutes out on the court, that I could take full advantage of them. So I was just really proud of myself for trusting the process and staying the course.
It wasn't just about getting the ball. It was about CaitlinClark seeing something in Lexie Hull that others overlooked. Where some saw a struggling player, Clark saw untapped potential. She didn't just feed Hull passes. She gave her confidence, encouragement, and belief. The "you've got the next one" talks? They weren't just words. They were a boost Hull desperately needed. Suddenly, she wasn't playing like an afterthought. She had purpose, energy, and a reason to prove herself. With Clark's support, Hull stopped fading into the background and started playing like she belonged, like she was there to win.
The basketball part of the transition is really tough. Everybody out on the court was one of the best players on their college teams, definitely the best player likely from their high school team. So it's just this mishmash of the best basketball players, and then you're playing against people that have been there for years and years.
And it showed. The moment CaitlinClark arrived, Lexie Hull's efficiency skyrocketed. Her shooting percentages improved, her confidence grew, and she started playing like the player Indiana hoped she would be. The same Hull who once struggled to find her place was now hitting shots, moving with purpose, and doing exactly what the Fever needed. She wasn't just sitting on the bench anymore, hoping for a chance. She was making an impact. Her connection with Clark changed everything. Hull went from being a forgotten name on the roster to a key piece in Indiana's offense. And it all came down to Clark's influence. It wasn't just about assists, it was about belief. Clark didn't just make plays, she made her teammates better, and Hull was one of the biggest beneficiaries. But let's talk about the Fever as a whole. Their chemistry completely shifted when Clark arrived, and it wasn't just about X's and O's. It was about the confidence, leadership, and intensity she brought to every practice and every game. For Hull, that was exactly what she needed. Without Clark's guidance, her career might have been another what-if story. But with Clark in the picture, Hull found new life, and the Fever finally had a future worth believing in.
Like now it's like, okay, every cut I have, every cut I make, every fast break I run, like I have a real opportunity to get the ball, which definitely like took me a second. And I think it really just took one of those to really get my head around like, oh, she's all the way down at the other end of the floor and she could still make the pass to me down at the block at this end. So, I mean, it's been awesome.
CaitlinClark didn't just come in and hit a few shots, though, let's be real, she definitely did that. Her impact went beyond scoring. She completely transformed the team's energy. Practices became more intense, players started holding each other accountable, and the days of going through the motions were over. No more lazy plays, everyone was locked in, fighting to win. And this wasn't just about being supportive, it was pure competitive fire. Clark's presence ignited something in the Fever, pushing them to play harder, smarter, and with purpose. That spark lit a fire under Lexie Hull, too. Fans had written her off, but with Clark leading the charge, Hull started to feel like she truly belonged in the WNBA. She wasn't just another hopeful player trying to survive, she was a competitor. And that shift in mindset, it changed everything. For Hull, it was the difference between fading out and stepping up.
We were just like sick that we had lost so many games and also feeling like we were better than that.
The Fever suddenly played with purpose. Their chemistry clicked, and those sold-out arenas? They weren't a coincidence. As the team improved, fans took notice, packing the stands like it was a playoff game. But let's be clear, this wasn't just about CaitlinClark's leadership. Sure, she was the catalyst, but players like Lexie Hull stepped up in a big way. Hull's role transformed. She went from "who's that?" to "wait, she's scoring again?" No longer stuck on the bench waiting for a chance, she was making an impact. Her shooting percentages, once inconsistent, started climbing. But it wasn't just about hitting a few shots. Hull is knocking down crucial buckets, proving she belonged. That's the true sign of a player on the rise. She wasn't just surviving in the WNBA, she was thriving. And with the Fever's momentum growing, Hull became a key piece in their resurgence.
She sees the game at a bigger scale, obviously with the platform that she's created for herself, and then that's transitioned to the game. It's huge. And I think like for me, especially as a point guard and as someone that's delivering a lot of the passes that lead to shots, like if I miss, she's definitely going to say like, you got the next one. Like I can count on her for keeping me like confident and positive. So yeah, I think that shows the player.
Now, let's dive into Lexie Hull's personal redemption story. This wasn't about luck or wishful thinking. She worked her butt off. The Olympic break was a game changer for her, not just because she got time off, but because the Fever used that month to focus on skill development. For Hull, that meant endless shooting drills. Every day, the team tracked shooting percentages, and slowly but surely, Hull's numbers improved. She wasn't just going through the motions, she was putting in the work. And the results? They weren't just on paper, they were real. By the second half of the season, Hull wasn't just a random role player anymore. She had become a key contributor to the Fever's success. She started hitting shots when they mattered most, and her shooting percentages skyrocketed. Mid-range jumpers, three-pointers, everything started to click. Hull wasn't just improving, she was thriving. And the stats backed it up. She went from being a forgotten name on the roster to a legitimate offensive threat. Every game, you could see the difference. Hull had found her rhythm, her confidence, and her role. And now, she was proving she belonged in the WNBA.
IndianaFever had a history-making year. What was that like for you to be a part of that?
I'm really grateful for the opportunity to not only play in the WNBA, but to be on a team like the IndianaFever. I've seen so much growth, not only on the team side, how we're performing on the court, but also the growth in fans.
So, what's the bottom line? The Fever's turnaround from a 1-8 start to playoff contenders was one of the season's most impressive stories. They didn't just improve their record, they completely changed their culture. A team that no one took seriously became a squad that others feared. And a huge part of that shift? CaitlinClark. Clark didn't just help the Fever win games, she made them believe they could. Her leadership sparked a mentality shift, and Lexie Hull's journey is the perfect example of what trust, hard work, and guidance can do. Hull went from barely making an impact to becoming a key piece in Indiana's resurgence. This is the kind of comeback story you don't see every day. With players like Hull, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell leading the charge, the Fever are no longer a struggling franchise. They're a rising powerhouse. And if this season proved anything, it's that Indiana is officially a team to watch.
I think one thing that our coaches did during that break, we had a full month of practice pretty much during the Olympic break, and they would put up every day after practice our shooting percentages from 2s and 3s during drills, during scrimmages, during everything. And I think that helped me because, some people would probably like, it's so annoying, whatever, but I personally liked it.
But don't just take my word for it. Fans are noticing too. The Fever aren't just filling seats, they're selling out arenas. And that kind of support isn't random, it's earned. This team has fought for it, and with their current trajectory, they're only getting started. Watch out, WNBA. The Fever aren't just back, they're here to stay. CaitlinClark didn't just save Lexie Hull's career, she transformed it. Hull is finding her groove, contributing, and proving why she was once one of the best in college. She's showing up, hitting shots, and making an impact. But Clark's leadership goes beyond stats or highlights. Sometimes, all it takes is belief and teamwork to turn everything around. And that's exactly what Clark gave Hull, a chance to shine. Now, Hull isn't just surviving in the WNBA, she's thriving, proving that with the right support, anything is possible.